So I'm a mom of a 4.5-year-old that is on the AIP protocol. We've been doing it about 2 weeks now. We've tried GAPS and we've tried AIP before. Both times, I'll be honest, I didn't do it fully. I gave up usually after 3 weeks, and I didn't take my time with reintroducing new foods. So this time we are in it for real. It took me about 2 weeks to kind of get in the swing of things, so I wanted to share some of the tips and kind of our journey so far. My main goal through this is to educate my son about health and how to take care of his body, but also not to feel super left out and to feel like he can really eat wonderful and delicious tasting food. I also want to make sure that my kid is not one of those kids that necessarily goes over to his buddy's house and starts judging his friends for what they're eating. Finding the balance between all of this with a 4-year-old can be really tough. Now, in order for this to be an experience that affects him lifelong, this can't be just about a month of you can't eat that, you can't eat that. So I developed a few rules that I'm hoping that even as we slowly transition him out of the protocol into a paleo or other type of diet, that these rules last with him. So for Huxley, his protein and his veggies always come before dessert. Now his dessert is fresh fruit or a popsicle that I've made out of spinach and bone broth and fruit and whatnot. But that being said, he can't have his dessert until after he's had some protein and veggies. I have a question for you. What makes you strong? What makes you strong? You're supposed to say protein. Huxley, what makes you smart? No! No! We've put priority that veggies and healthy fats, but mostly veggies, are the priority over everything. And I do that with my kid because for us, he can very easily eat meat, and that's what he kind of tends to draw towards, where he'll eat plenty of protein. And I actually want to avoid overdoing the protein on his gut and make sure that he's getting the vegetables. So if we're ever in a situation where he's eating his plate and he's like, oh, this is too much food, I go, you don't have to eat everything. I want you to eat the veggies, and then after that, if you want a few bites of everything else, that's totally fine. But the veggies always come first. Eat the rainbow. So this one, at first when I heard it, I didn't think it was that big of a deal. But after experimenting for a little while, where we made a chart and it's on our fridge, and every time we eat a meal, we check off the colors that we ate. And by the end of the week, we look at the chart and we see what colors we haven't really eaten much of. This was really interesting for me, this experiment, because one, it was able to show me actually how much we're not eating the rainbow very often. And two, it also encouraged my son. He gets really excited, and when we're at grocery stores, we're able to have a project now where we can look for certain colors of food. After 2 weeks of focusing on food, we introduced the concept of water. Water is the miracle worker. It flushes out all the bad guys. So anytime he has a stuffy nose, tummy ache, feels weird, pretty much every excuse I can, I say, well, we should drink some water to flush it out. It'll make us feel better. Another challenge I'm trying to do, which is really hard around this water challenge, is for my husband and I, we have glass gallon jugs of water that we try to drink every day. And so I looked up for 4-year-olds how much water they should be drinking, a little bit under a liter. Is that your protein and veggies? Go show the camera. Yep, right there. And so he has his own jug that we try to make sure that we drink by the end of the day. Now, it's not happening, but that is our big goal for this month. So another thing that I try to do to kind of gently educate him is if we're walking down the street or we observe a child having a tantrum, I'll talk about it being totally normal, and his emotions, sometimes our emotions just get so big and we don't know how to either communicate them or talk about them. But we'll also kind of open up the door question of, well, why maybe is the kid having a tantrum? And it could be usually revolved around health. Maybe the kid didn't get enough sleep, maybe he's really thirsty, or maybe he ate too much sugar. And so we start to talk about all the reasons that maybe that kid was having a hard time. And that also leads towards when my own kid is having a hard time or throwing a tantrum, that's not the time to educate. That's the time to comfort and kind of fix the issue, get their emotions calm, and then we talk about, okay, well, what was happening there? And in a lot of cases, maybe they were overtired or they didn't eat properly or whatnot. And so I'm just slowly introducing the idea of how we treat our body affects our mood. Study the poop. So this one's really fun. I found a chart just on Google that I printed out, like a kid's poop chart. and it's laminated and by his chair, potty chair. And so every time he goes to the bathroom, or almost every time, we take a look, or I'll make a comment like, oh wow, you ate really well today, your poop looks great. Or I might say something like, oh, you know, you're a little dehydrated, or, you know, you have little rabbit poop, so we need to get some more veggies. Or maybe it's mushy and the opposite, and I'll say, oh, maybe you ate something your body didn't like, let's pay attention to that next time. And so I slowly just make these comments, and we have this chart that we've gone over, and it's a cute chart that's related to rabbits and trees and all this kind of stuff, and he really likes it. It's not something we do all the time, but it definitely is enough that it's lasted an impression. The other day, my family's dog had some diarrhea, and he came up to me and goes, I think the doggy ate something his body didn't like because he's having some bad poop. And so I wish I learned that a lot sooner, and so I'm hoping that it will help him in the future. I really make sure not to shame him or ever stress him out about his diet, and I make sure to kind of keep it casual around other kids, so I won't go into super education mode when I'm at other people's houses, because I don't want him to feel like he starts judging other kids. I want him to feel really proud for being healthy and eating well. And a lot of times at other places, he'll ask his buddies, hey buddy, do you want some carrots? It'll make you strong. Or he might start offering some of his healthy snacks to his friends. We really put a focus on what he can have, not what he can't have. So we were already doing this earlier when we were having to deal with all his food allergies. So after every doctor's appointment or every test that we would do with him, we would say, okay, so you're allergic to cod, peanuts, almonds, blah, blah, blah. I go, but what you can have is, and then I will list 50 things that he can have that he's not allergic to. And he would get so excited when it came list to it, because of course things on there was like chocolate and all other kind of stuff that he was very excited about. So I always really try to put emphasis and all the focus and try to avoid as much as possible the things that he can't have. Now, as far as this diet, I try to do the same thing. Especially if there's a decently healthy food, like for example, eggs are great, but we're not eating them right now. So if he sees maybe his grandma eating some eggs and he goes, oh, can I have some eggs? I go, oh no, we're just taking a break right now to let our body rest. And then in a couple weeks or a month from now, we'll be able to try it again and see if our body likes it. So I always keep things temporary, and I really make sure that if it is something that we're not eating now but we can't eat later, I make sure that he knows, like, we will be trying it soon. We're just letting our body take a break so that we know once we do eat it, whether or not we'll feel good or bad. So if you're thinking about getting started with this, one thing I recommend is that you really need a lot of time and focus and support the first week. So for us, I didn't work the first week because it was so much about prepping and studying, researching what to eat, getting the right groceries, and then obviously dealing with the biggest transition is the tantrums or whatever else that's going to happen in that first 1 or 2 weeks. Now, I'll be totally honest, and this is not necessary, but we decided to pull our son out of school for a month. Now, his school's awesome and has worked with all his diets before, but I really wanted, for my own sanity, and I really wanted this to work. So for me, I felt like just keeping him for a month where we could focus on educating about health, making sure he's sleeping, not stressed out by school, and just really, and not stressed out by the pressures of seeing other kids and everything they can eat, then I just felt it was the best to take him out of school. Now that's a huge deal. Most parents don't need to do that, so I don't want to stress you out thinking that you have to do that. That's the decision that really worked for us. Now, be prepared to put most of your money, your finances, towards food for the first month. Now, you don't have to. You could survive off of chicken and broccoli, but I'm going to tell you, for the sake of your stress levels, that it's really going to help when you have certain special foods that help your kids transition into this diet. Eating just chicken and broccoli would be tough for anyone for a whole month, so imagine a kid having to do that. At first, my husband got really mad at me because I had $50 worth of weird flowers in our Amazon cart. And I told him, I said, we're gonna need these because I really need to be able to do X, Y, and Z recipe as I transition him. And at first he was really apprehensive, but now he loves everything I make him, so don't worry about that. One thing that really helped me was that I used Pinterest as a way to get me organized and inspired when first starting this. So I wanted to make sure that I had a replacement for all his yummy foods, French fries, waffles, pancakes, all that kind of stuff, spaghetti, all that stuff that kids normally like that will be quite dramatic if I just took it all away all of a sudden. So I wanted to make sure I had these kind of transitional foods, and these foods also really help when you're in social settings. And just the other day, we were at a friend's house, and his friend started eating goldfish, and he really wanted some. He started to kind of get really upset, and I said, how about you have one of your waffles? And then all of a sudden his buddy was going, waffle? I want a waffle? And then I was able to turn that situation into my kid having the coolest food at the party. So I used Pinterest, and I started gathering AIP recipes or even paleo recipes that I could modify, and I just created a whole album of things that I had just ready at my disposal to start experimenting with recipes. I don't recommend this for the first week or two, but if you do have to, which I have had to a couple times, be in a situation where we are eating out, then I want to encourage you to have no shame and just bring your kids food. I used to think that was just awful and disrespectful to come to a restaurant and have someone bring their own food. And I was in an In-N-Out the other day, and as I was waiting in line, I looked at a table where a family had brought all their favorite fast foods into one shop. So there was one kid eating McDonald's, another kid there for In-N-Out. And I remember thinking, they have no shame in bringing whatever food, fast food, that they want. Why should I be afraid because my kid has tons of allergies? It's almost easier on the restaurant than everything that I have to do to work with the waiters to try to figure out something he can eat. So I just started packing his own food. And again, like I said, if you have their go-tos, like if I bring my own French fries, then usually I can get away with ordering maybe my own French fries at the restaurant and make sure that he has his ready to go. Another thing about social settings, don't let your kid get too tired or too hungry. My kid is really awesome. He's had allergies for over a year and a half. And so he's really used to not being able to eat a lot of what people around him are eating. That being said, I make sure that I'm always keeping him well fed. There was one time where we were out at the beach and he got super tired, super hungry. I had to take him to a restaurant because we were with a bunch of people. And when he normally is pretty cool about things, he started screaming in the restaurant, "Bread! I need my bread!" And he was just crying. And of course, as soon as I got food in his belly, then he calmed down and was totally fine. So I did manage to survive that night. But since then, I have made sure that I always have an arsenal of snacks on me, so he was always well fed. Always know where the nearest grocery store is, especially Trader Joe's and Whole Foods are really great for those specialty items that you need to get, but any grocery store will do. I make sure that if I'm traveling or driving, I always kind of look up the nearest, because we can't really eat out at restaurants, but it's pretty easy to go in and grab a meal at one of those shops. So it's been 2 weeks, and the first sign of healing that I have noticed is my son is no longer massively bloated. He has been severely bloated for over a year. Even removing all his allergies, we just could not figure it out. He was always had a huge tummy, and finally I am happy to say that he looks normal and healthy, and so we're very excited about that, and we can't wait to see more improvements. And I can't wait to get to a point a bit down the line when I can start experimenting with not giving him his steroid inhalers and his medications, and see if we can transition to a more natural healing of his asthma. I also really want to get into bulk cooking, because right now I found my specific recipes that I really like, and I have a little bit more experimenting to go. So now that they're on lockdown, I really want to just be able to make tons and freeze them. And dear God, I can't wait till my son gets to go on to paleo diet. Once we introduce eggs, game on, it's gonna be so much easier. Now, one weird thing that I believe is now fixed is that the first week or two, pretty much I feel like since starting AIP, his poop became just full of undigested food, which was really weird to me, because I understand maybe cleansing and to find weird things in there, but ideally AIP foods I thought would be kind of the easiest to digest in a way, or the least inflammatory. And so I was starting to get really nervous, because my son already is pretty small for his age, and so I was really worried about any sort of malabsorption issues. I wanted to wait because we have only been on this diet for a little bit, but after speaking to a friend of mine who is luckily an AIP specialist, and I didn't know this at the time, she was able to talk to me about things and order some supplements. So a few things we kind of agreed on is that I wasn't sure with all of my son's allergies if there was any sort of histamine issues. So I know tons of people recommend fermented food and probiotics, but we both agreed that we should maybe limit those a little bit in the beginning, if hold off on those, and give my son's kind of stomach and body time to fully rest for a few weeks before we introduce something with high histamines. And so what we did decide on is she got from Standard Process, because she had a license, some echinacea, some like really good powerful echinacea to build his immunity, and some tuna fish because he's allergic to codfish. And so we've started him on just those two things, and he's doing really well. And oddly enough, the day after he started the fish oil, his poop is perfect. It's darker in color than it was. It's intact. Things are really looking good. So I don't think it's just a coincidence. I think it must have been those added supplements. And in about a week or two, we might introduce maybe something more like a multi and see how that goes. The last thing I really want to work on in the future, maybe in a couple weeks when my son is just totally accustomed to this diet, is that I really want to limit the fruit and kind of the heavier starches for a little while, because just in case there's a candida issue, even though the AIP is wonderful for the inflammation, the amount of fruit that he's eating a lot, is not going to really help with any sort of candida issue if he has that. So that is kind of another goal I have coming up. All right, so if any of you mamas are in the same boat, feel free to comment and share your experiences, how old your kids are, and kind of what you've been going through with this journey. Okay, take care. Bye.